Hey guys, welcome back to the Music Hole. Cole here again. And today we're talking about a very, very important album in music history. It's called Spirit of Eden by Talk Talk from 1988. And essentially Mark Hollis and company invented the post-rock genre with this release. So it's kind of jazzy, it's kind of slow and spacey, avant-garde even. It's a really unique sound that was copied over and over again ever since. And they really perfected it on this album. And Mark Hollis' singing in particular really stands out as well. It's just a really lovely album. But it's only 6 songs. It's relatively short. But I am excited to talk about it with you guys. I hope you like it. I hope you find it interesting. So let's jump right in to track number 1, which is called The Rainbow. Yeah, so if you can believe it, these guys were known for being a new wave band, a very energetic, kind of cliche-ish new wave band. Although they were good, their previous album, The Color of Spring, is one of the best new wave albums. It's very arty. But on this album, as you just heard from the first minute of the album, it's very spacey. They take their time. It's very atmospheric. A little jazz is thrown in there, right? It's kind of improvisational. It's just a very different sound for the rock genre. So it's amazing that they took this leap of faith, essentially, right? To go from new wave into this type of sound is like a massive change in sound, right? So I just wanted to play the first minute of the song for you guys, just to kind of demonstrate just how new this was back in the day, back in 1988. But I do have another clip from this song with some lyrics on it, so let's check it out. Yeah, so there aren't really many lyrics on this album, or even on this track, but this song is about something, It's basically the inner torment of a prisoner who has, committed a wrongdoing. He's serving time, but it sounds like while he's been in prison, he's realized the error of his ways, so to speak, and he's gotten better. You know, he's mentally fixed now, maybe through Jesus or something. We don't know. But of course, he's stuck in prison. And from what it sounds like, he's probably serving time. So the fact that he has changed for the better is basically a complete waste, right? You know, he says, this song the jailer sings, my time has run. So it's the song of the jailer, which all that means is, you know, you've got all these people in prison who, you know, hopefully eventually realize how wrong they were, and eventually they all are rehabilitated somewhat, but then they're still stuck in prison. So, you know, and the fact is there are many crimes that people are put in prison for, which are kind of petty crimes. You know, like all those decades where people were put in jail for smoking pot or dealing pot, right? These are crimes that were punished really harshly. I mean, people have been in jail for decades over things like this. So I imagine he's speaking about somebody not like that. He's speaking about a lifer who, you know, the fact that he has been rehabilitated mentally means nothing, essentially, because he can't contribute to society at all. He's just stuck here until he dies. So this is the song the jailer sings, right? It's just this very sad, depressing song. But that's the rainbow. And I imagine it's called the rainbow potentially because, you know, life is not just roses and happiness and all the wonderful things. It's also, the rainbow also includes the darkness, right? Like the people in the song who are in prison who can't escape. So the rainbow encompasses all things good and bad. But anyway, that's all I want to say about this song. It's a really interesting beginning to Spirit of Eden. So let's move on to track number 2, which is called Eden. Let's check it out.
Summer blend of Eden, Easter's and crowns, another destiny lies legion upon the ground. Everybody needs someone to live by. Everybody needs someone. Everybody needs someone to live
Yeah, so Eden is pretty interesting. It's kind of literally dealing with the Garden of Eden myth. But when he says everybody needs someone to live by, you know, Ray John omnipotent, I imagine on some level he's referring to the prisoner again, who maybe has been saved by Jesus, and he lives on, you know, he lives his life through Jesus, in the sense that like he's able to get through his lifetime in prison with the idea that he's going to be saved, right? That he's going to go to heaven because he's probably confessed his crimes, and you know, as long as you do that, you're all square with God. So everyone needs someone to everyone will need someone to live by, as he says, and whether that's Jesus or the love of your life, you know, it doesn't really matter. We all need something other than ourselves, right? We need that social bond, or we need that spiritual bond, whatever it is. So I like the song quite a bit, you know, it's true. But that's Eden. So let's move on to track number 3, which is called Desire.
Desire whispered, spoken. In time, rivers, but in the pain, but in the pain, but in the pain, I'm just a terrible explosion within myself.
So speaking of again of our prison man, it sounds like he's battling that inner desire to see the outside world again, because he mentions rivers and oceans, which, he'll never see again, because basically all he sees is the sky from his window, from his jail cell, right? So, he says, that ain't me, babe, and I'm just content to relax than to drown within myself. So he's really trying to come to terms with the fact that he's stuck here, and even though it sounds like he's not being harassed by his fellow prisoners, the real torment is within his own mind. He's got to battle all of these demons that are trying to get in, that are telling him like, oh, remember all these wonderful things? Well, you'll never experience them again. So he doesn't want to drown within himself. So, his life is just getting through each day, day to day, one day at a time, and, not basically just wallowing in self-pity and not being miserable every day. So, this poor guy, we don't know what he did. It was probably something terrible, but, he's paying the price. He's in prison. So, what more can we ask of this guy, really? But that's Desire. That's all I want to say about it. So let's move on to track number 4, which is called Inheritance.
Don't you know where love has gone? Buried in progress in the clouds. And we love to linger on, heading and expecting the dawn. To regress with open arms, ascension in scent of end.
So inheritance makes me ponder, this guy's inheritance is basically from Adam, from the Garden of Eden. So he's inherited life. He's been given the gift of life. He's nature's son, as he says. But his only progress in life that he's able to measure is through the window in his jail cell. He sees the clouds moving. So that's his only way to know that life is going on, right? Because everything else just seems like stagnant, essentially. So maybe he's in solitary even. Again, I could be wrong about the whole prison thing, but it does make me think about this. Like every time I listen to it, that's what it feels like it's about. So anyway, so this guy, this poor guy, you know, he's stuck in his jail cell, and the only way he knows that time is passing really is by looking at the clouds moving by. You know, this poor man. He says, how we learn to linger on. So, you know, as I mentioned, like he's getting through the day probably through prayer, through a newfound spirituality. You know, he's probably found Jesus. I mean, it's what most prisoners end up doing, because like, what else is there? You know, on the one hand, they want to be saved because they know finally that what they did was wrong, and they're worried that, you know, if they die, or when they die rather, that they might go to hell. And you know, the longer you have, the more time you have alone to think about these things, like you would if you're a lifer in solitary, you know, the more you are convinced that hell exists, that God will punish you, you know, blah, blah, blah. So this poor guy, you know, he has realized the error of his ways, but it's too late. And so the only thing left in his life is to try and find a way to pass the time until he inevitably dies, you know, decades later. So yeah, this guy inherited life, and he completely wasted it. So I think that's what he's trying to say on this song, but I could be wrong. But anyway, so that's inheritance. So let's move on to track number 5, which is called I Believe in You.
Just can't bring myself to see it starting.
So we learn a little bit more about our character here. It sounds like he was a drug addict. You know, he was a heroin addict, and he got caught for that, and you know, was sentenced to many, many years, as a lot of drug addicts are, especially for something like heroin. And he's had a lot of time to think about it, and other people, he's had a lot of time to think about other drug addicts who are struggling through all this, and he's just kind of wondering, like, when is enough enough? When is enough going to be enough? When are people going to realize that these things will ruin your life, that it's not worth the momentary happiness and momentary bliss that something like heroin would give you, right? So he's kind of just, he's almost weeping at the unfortunate reality that nobody will learn from this guy's mistakes, that all of these horrible things will just keep repeating endlessly, you know, through ad nauseum, right? This guy messed up. He did heroin, he got caught, he's in prison, he learned from his mistakes, but this is the story as old as time. That stuff is just going to keep happening over and over and over again, and there's literally nothing he can do to help the new generation. So he's kind of thinking about that, I would imagine, and it's just bringing him down, you know, as it would for many people. But that's I Believe in You. That's all I want to say about it. So let's talk about the last track. It's the last clip I have. It's from, the name of the song is Wealth. Let's check it out.
Create upon my flesh. Create a home within my head. Take my freedom. Let my freedom out. Let my freedom out. Take my freedom, forgiving me.
Yeah, so this guy has finally just given in completely to Jesus, is what it sounds like. You know, God has given him a home within his head, as he says. He's got a sacred love. So he's able to get through his awful life for days now by just imagining probably the fact that he might go to heaven now that he's confessed all of his sins, right? Now that he's been rehabilitated mentally, and now that he's become religious, and now that he's probably confessed to, you know, a priest at the prison. So this guy is finally happy, you know. The song is called Wealth, so I imagine he's not speaking about, you know, material wealth, he's speaking about spiritual wealth. So this guy is finally at peace somewhat, you know. So I guess good for him. You know, we don't know what he did other than being a heroin addict. So maybe that's all he did. In which case, this guy's life is really unfortunate and a shame. You know, somebody like him doesn't deserve to be in prison for decades for just being a heroin addict, in my opinion anyway. But so yeah, this is a very short album. You know, there aren't many lyrics. It's just basically just very improvisational, kind of jazz-like, free form, a little avant-garde, you know, long silences. It's very ponderous and atmospheric, and it's just a very unique sounding album. I mean, it was one of the first albums to sound like that back in 1988, if not the first. You know, Mark Hollis just really knocked it out of the park with this one, and it's wonderful that they took a stab at it, that they did the new wave thing. So maybe they got paid for being successful new wavers, and they decided to use the money to fund this project. That's kind of sounds like what happened. But anyway, so that's Spirit of Eden. I hope you guys thought it was interesting. I hope you guys liked it. You know, feel free to comment as always with your thoughts on it. Did you think it was interesting? Did you not like it? Whatever you want to say, I'll check it out. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. I've got a bunch of these videos lined up for you guys for the next few months, so I'm very excited. But yeah, that's Talk Talk. That's Spirit of Eden. Check it out and have a good one.